Yeah, let's get started. So, this is our very first rich conversation for Financial Literacy Month. Hi, Kit. My name is Stella Gold. I'm the founder of My Gold Standard, and I'm going to be your host today for such a beautiful and abundant conversation. We have dubbed this Deconstructing Colonial Views Around Money. And while that might sound like a mouthful or feel like a mouthful or feel very heavy, the deconstruction of that is going to be so nourishing, so plentiful, and so pleasurable because we have such an amazing guest with us today. All right, we got Jamie in the house. Jamie, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We are getting started. So, yeah, Mina Minou is a very dear friend of mine. I would say one of my soulmates for sure. I have learned so much from Mina, and we have had conversations around this way of life so many times in our friendship, and I really, really thought it was so important to put it in the spotlight and to have an audience that needs to hear our thoughts and our processes and our deconstruction of colonization. So, Mina, I want you to introduce yourself and step up to the stage.
Sure. Hello. My name is Mina Minou. I use she, her pronouns. My cat will be coming in and out. You can see his little tail right here. His name is Kimchi. And yes, I am a multidisciplinary artist. I'm a community worker, mostly in youth-oriented and specifically marginalized youth-oriented spaces and nonprofits. And then I am a religious professional who's been working in the Unitarian Universalist stratosphere for most of my life. And all those things come together in my storytelling, in my solidarity work, and in general combination of artistic and spiritual practices with a goal towards community healing, amplifying voices, and yeah, fighting the fucking man, as I would eloquently put it.
Very eloquent.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't really think of too much else of how to introduce myself. Feel free to ask any questions you'd like, but otherwise I'm going to dive into our land acknowledgement, because what is a conversation on deconstructing colonialism without a land acknowledgement? Or what is any event without a land acknowledgement, if I'm being honest? So without further ado, one small effort we as non-Indigenous people make in our lives is to open up with a land acknowledgement. This is a practice we take part in because it calls us all to think about where we are physically and what the history of that land and space is. By examining the history and understanding its current state, we get into a practice of saying the names of the land and the peoples whose land we are occupying. One very small but important action we as settlers and non-Indigenous people can take to become better accomplices to our Indigenous siblings. To understand the importance and struggle of the land back movement and to uplift the need for Indigenous sovereignty. We consciously take this time to acknowledge that we are all residing on what are traditionally Indigenous lands. For me, I'm currently in Montreal, formerly known as Jojage, land of the Kanien'kehá:ka people. I know that Stella is on Ohlone land, and I think most of the rest of you are as well, which is very cool. If you know the traditional name of the land that you're on and the original custodians of it, feel free to write it in the chat again, or for the first time. We call these lands unceded as they were taken without treaty or agreement. In acknowledging this gruesome reality and uplifting the diversity of Indigenous languages and cultures across Turtle Island, known to settlers as North America, we honor and support the work of Indigenous peoples to build and rebuild strong communities. Again, if you're unfamiliar with the traditional names of the land that you currently reside on, I encourage you to take some time to learn them as we work in solidarity with the land back movement and in the work to decolonize our bodies, our minds, and our environments. A great resource for this knowledge is native-land.ca. With this, I close out this acknowledgement and an understanding that while it is important to do, it is not the end-all be-all of this work. And I thank you for your time, patience, presence, and openness of spirit. And I welcome Stella back to the front.
That was so beautiful. And I wanted to also share that I did a workshop a couple weeks ago, and I did my land acknowledgement, and Mina invited me to work on that a little bit more. And I thought I loved that invitation. And, when I heard Mina's land acknowledgement, I was like, I understand exactly and precisely what that truly means now and why it's relevant and so important. So thank you for that. I want to also transition into a grounding breath because, the conversation that we're about to have might trigger our nervous systems. It might make some movement in our nervous systems. It doesn't necessarily have to be a trigger, but it could just be discomfort. And I want to start with a grounding breath, and the way that I like to do it, and I think Mina will be on board, is something that I learned from Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts. Have you seen that, Mina?
Yes, I love it. I'm obsessed.
So in the show, I believe their name is Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
They do deep breaths. I think it's on a 4 count, hold, and then out 8. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that together, and I'll do it with you. And I always say this is for all of us, but it also is for me to ground into this conversation too. So let's close our eyes, and I can't see y'all, so I'm just going to trust that your eyes are closed. So breathe in just naturally, just to start it off. And let it out. Okay, we're going to breathe in on the count of 4. Hold on the count of 4. And out on the count of 8. And do this one more time. Breathe in for the count of 4. Hold. Out 8. I feel that spirit in me. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. Okay, so yeah, let's transition into the conversation unless there's anything that you want to add.
No, I'm ready.
Okay, cool. So we'll hold some questions for the end, and some thoughts and reflections as well, because I want this to be an engaging conversation for all of us. But what I really want to start with, in which each guest, I just love to know, what is your first money memory? The one that just pops up and that you can remember the most.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I just feel like I should give you context. My mom is a Virgo. I am not. And that has had a lot of impact. But anyway, so my first money memory, I was a really industrious kid. I started babysitting, pet sitting, house sitting, doing odd jobs at the church and like whatever when I was really young, like probably 9 or 10. And my first memory related to money was my mom helping me learn how to make a spreadsheet to track my income and expenses when I was yeah, like around 10 years old.
Wow.
You know, making my own business cards and like drawing. I can remember very vividly drawing a little dinosaur and like writing my name on it and my phone number. Um, but yeah, my mom was very keen on me understanding not just like the whole traditional value of a dollar thing, but like really understanding how to track those things and like making sure that I had the good foundation. She's all about being a strong, independent woman, you know, type of a thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that started really young for me, and it started with spreadsheets. Yes, very Virgo sun. Like, whoa. Yeah.
Sean is a Virgo rising, and the last person that I dated was also a Virgo sun, and I couldn't, my water sign just couldn't
Mhm.
handle it. And me and Mina are both Cancers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is oof. Oh yes, Jay is also Virgo rising. I'm here for it. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Lots of skills, lots of hard, good skills. Very necessary.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. What an amazing memory. I want to share the one that comes to mind for myself is and we're talking about our mothers, and Mina knows like my mother wound is slowly healing. And when I think about my mom and money, for some reason this just came up. And every time I ask myself, oh, what's your first money memory? A different one comes up. But one that's coming through right now is those Coca-Cola, those big Coca-Cola piggy banks. I don't know if you remember those, but they were huge. They were like, I was like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and it was as big as me, and it just filled with pennies, filled with like loose change. And I remember thinking like, we are so rich. Like, and my mom would be like, yeah, when we fill it up to the top, we're going to take it to the Coinstar and it's all going to turn into cash. And I remember going to the Coinstar and my mom like slowly like scooping in the the Coca-Cola into, or the Coca-Cola change into the Coinstar machine, and her being like, this is like nothing because they take so much.
Mm-hmm.
They take so much. They take so much in fees, and it's just not like, I thought it was more, right? Her visualization, she really thought it was more. So that's the memory that's coming to my mind, because I was thinking the same. I was like, yeah, I thought we were rich. I thought this could pay off our house. And so, my follow-up question to that, because I do want the audience to get to know you more, is, who are your ancestors? Let's start with that. Where are they from? What's their story?
Yeah. It's a complicated one.
As
But
most are.
as most are. I will just, I kind of think my background would make a really good comic book one day, which is such an egotistical thing to say, but I really do, because my mom side of the family is white. I'll start with my mom, and predominantly from Tennessee and Georgia, although they had just straight up identify as Southern, not really, you know. And I know that there's like British, Irish lineage, but they're the type of folks who've been living in the South for long enough that they don't really think about what was before the South as much. Like they don't have much it's not like, I don't know, I feel like I grew up around a lot of white people who like were really into the fact that once upon a time they were Irish, and so they get really into St. Patrick's Day or whatever. And that wasn't my family. It was very much like, we are Southern, this is what we do. And very, very poor Southern, just to say. Like they did, my mom's parents and grandparents started to accumulate some wealth when my mom was in high school, I believe. They rose from like very lower class to like mid class. And from my perspective, by the time I was a human in the world who noticed things, they like were, retired and living in a house in the woods, and I know that my grandpa was like a vice president of some big company. And so I thought that they were really wealthy. And when I found out later that they were in fact not very wealthy, I had kind of a similar like, oh, I thought this was different type of a thing. So that's my mom's side, poor Southern Christian. My grandpa is not a Trumper, but is still a Republican. My grandma has passed away, unfortunately, but she had a really interesting story of like going from, Southern Baptist Christian person into somebody who was really devoted to nature and was really into poetry and didn't really like going to church by the time she was like an older person. And we usually would skip church and get ice cream and hang out in the woods. And so that her spirituality, as well as her like political identity, really shifted as she grew up. And she was a really hardcore Democrat, which for her is a very liberal thing compared to where she started. So that's them. And then my dad's side of the family, they're Iranian and complete opposite. Iranian, like aristocratic, very, very upper class people who, were completely destroyed in the Islamic Revolution in the 70s. And my dad moved to the US and lost pretty much everything in the revolution. And so he started from the bottom, as many, many immigrants do in the face of political warfare and refuge. But I will say my dad's side of the family, a lot of it is stuff that I'm discovering now as an adult and trying to figure out because, my dad immigrated or became, a refugee when he was like a 19-year-old. And then he was in university and he got married and he had kids all in his 20s. And I used to have a lot of resentment for my dad for not sharing more of his culture or my family background and like giving me this major identity complex. But the older I get, the more I realize, like I'm 29 now. At this point, my dad already had 2 kids. And he was just a traumatized young man, who was forced out of his country, who lost, friends and family to war and imprisonment and all sorts of horrible things. And his entire life was turned around. He went from being this ultimately spoiled little rich boy, from what I'm understanding, to somebody who had literally nothing in a new country with nobody, in a country that hated him. So it was like he often hid his Iranian-ness, and he didn't like. We had the benefit of the food and the art and the mythology, which my brother and I really clung to growing up for our like identity, but he didn't talk about it very much because he was traumatized, which is only something I'm like understanding and accepting now.
I feel like, as we get older, we finally recognize that our parents are also human beings.
Yeah.
And all human. And that is, to realize that there's a grieving process and also a healing process. I kind of want to jump. I feel like you dropped so many seeds that I just want to touch base on, especially with 2 really complex, experiences when it comes to relationship or lack thereof to wealth and money. But, I'm curious, what are some examples of other cultures in pre-colonial times and their views on abundance, wealth, and prosperity? Because we see, as you shared with both of your parents and even their grandparents, their experience with the extremity of abundance and scarcity and so much change. Like I'm envisioning like especially for your father, like the rug just being pulled out underneath him.
Mm-hmm.
And we have talked before about, and I love that you are now building on your culture and connecting a relationship with that, because
Mm-hmm.
when we have talked outside of, in our own conversations, I was sharing with Mina my just complete wonder behind the Lunar New Year, and how in that culture, and I celebrate with my partner Chinese New Year specifically, like they celebrate, wealth and abundance. And I know on your side, your Iranian side, they do too. But it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a complex situation because it's
It's
right.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so it is complex, and I will say, like, uh I'm gonna actively hate on colonialism all the time, but issues of like class and insecurities and those things, those predate colonialism. So it's not like I'm going to talk about Iran or other cultures and say that they don't have fucking issues. So, can I cuss? Sorry, because they do.
You can cuss, yes.
Okay. Because they do have issues. But I think what's really interesting, well, I'll start with the New Year just because that's where you started. So Iranian New Year is called Nowruz. Um, it translates like New Day, and it aligns with the spring equinox every year. So March 20th, 21st, depending on the year. And there's a lot of traditions that go along with it. And one of them is setting up what's called a Hafsin table, which is the table of 7 S's. And you set up this table and it like creates, it's part of the creation ritual for starting off your new year and your new journey. And you fill it with obviously things, the 7 S's that you want to welcome into the new year. So you have like flowers, or specifically hyacinths, or cyclodones, the ones that are upside down. Anyway, for beauty, you have something sweet, either like honey or like a treat or something for sweetness. You have sumac for the warmth of the red of that spice and to bring in that warmth into your life. You have vinegar for patience. Usually you have a book of poetry, or like sometimes people will use the Quran. We always did poetry for like wisdom and legacy. A mirror for reflection. I'm definitely listing more than 7. But then the main one that we care about right now is a little bowl of coins, because you want to bring in prosperity and abundance and like financial security into the new year for yourself and your family and your community. So that's also one of my earliest money memories, is the bowl of coins on our Hafsin table every Nowruz. And they're always like different, or coins from all over the world, because my dad traveled so much, and that was also like a really cool thing. But the philosophy behind that is welcoming in fortune, financial fortune, abundance, prosperity into our lives. And it's something that we wish for other people, and it's something that we wish for ourselves. And it's something that is acknowledged as, like, yes, there are these showboating sides of Iranian culture, which are like kind of gross, personally, but hard to escape. But then there's also the idea of like community well-being. Iran is such a hospitable country. They want to feed each other, they want to uplift each other, they want to help each other. They argue, they do this thing called tarufing, which is when you argue for who gets to pay the bill, and it's like a sign of respect, whoever gets to pay the bill. So yeah, that is an interesting, that's like where the idea of community, abundance, and prosperity kind of started for me. And then I've been doing a lot of research and work on connecting to my Swana, or Southwest Asian and North African roots, which is that, like, instead of saying Middle Eastern, we say Swana now, just in case you're wondering. And that idea of community, abundance, and like even the showboating, obviously, you can see in a lot of different countries across that area. And it's just been really interesting to learn about, because it's not like wealth is a dirty thing. It's something that people want, and they acknowledge that they want, both for themselves and for others. And I think that we see a lot of that like similarities, because obviously of like, you know, the history of the Silk Road and the trade that happened. There's so much commonality in all of these different mostly Asian and African cultures where the Silk Road like touched historically. I'm rambling.
No, you're not. I think like the theme of a lot of cultures, you know, that when we separate the colonization from it, is using money as where we think about, you know, our neighbor in that process, you know, prosperity and wealth. And you know, from your perspective and opinion, you know, where do you think that, what are some of the things that we do need to deconstruct? Because that's a big one, right? When it comes to colonial views, a big one for me is scarcity. Like that is, I feel like that is like the biggest myth and lie that colonization tells us. But yeah, when you think about colonial views, like, yeah, what are some of the other things that we can deconstruct and pay attention to? You know, this isn't an overnight process. This is going to be lifelong.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. The whole scarcity thing is a big one. I would echo. But then for me, what really comes up is the destructive habits that colonialism has had on our self-worth and our views of humans as being worthy of dignity and respect regardless. And I think that's like colonialism has really destroyed the idea of helping your neighbor by putting it in this like Christian salvation mindset. And
Yes.
just like that's not
Like
doing
we
anything.
don't, no one needs saving.
Yeah, no one
Actually,
needs.
people were fine.
Exactly. And it's bullshit, because it makes the idea of helping seem like a game to win, which it's not. And it makes it seem like if you're not able to help, that you're insufficient, or you know, you're not doing your part or whatever, which is also bullshit. And then it really it makes us doubt our worth, and it makes us view like our value is put on a productivity scale. Just ruins our ability to enjoy ourselves. It ruins our ability to feel worthy of receiving abundance and pleasure and um and you know, money and
Yeah, I mean, that is the receiving part, is something that I had to really learn and consciously step into every day, because you know, my mother, who's an immigrant from the Philippines and has similar experience that your father had, you know, wanted to or let me actually, similar experience but different, because she's not a refugee. Like she still has a home, she had a home, it's there, but you know, looking for a better life because she coexisted in a dictatorship, you know.
yeah.
And I had seen her martyr herself so many times, where she cannot receive stability or security at all. Like she has to give her money away. And a lot of the work that I do is telling people to keep their money, because like they, you know, to want it. And maybe this, you know, I'm going to try to choose my language carefully, but because I'm very big on like reclaiming your agency through this, because we all have agency, right? The colonization teaches us that we need saving, that we don't have agency, that we're like these helpless beings that, you know, can't fend for themselves. But so many people are afraid of receiving, are afraid of having money. it's rarely that they really are afraid of not having it. Just from personal one-on-one experience with people, and my own personal experience too. I was terrified. I was like, I can't have this. This makes me greedy. This makes me selfish. Like, people are suffering out there. So I'm curious how does that resonate with you? And I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Dude, I'll just say this is a real growing edge for me. I'm an artist. I'm a community worker. We're supposed to be poor. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I've been internalized, is like, oh, you work for the community. You do emotional labor for people. We're not gonna value you financially. You love what you do. You can live off that love.
Yeah.
Which I'm just kind of, thanks to you, honestly, am just kind of like saying, no, that's wrong. I can't live off love. I actually would like to be able to like afford to treat myself well, and not only well, but like just basic average, you know, literally I want an average life.
Yeah. Mina J just wrote, love doesn't pay rent.
Love does not. It is true. It is so true. Anyway, so it's like a learning curve, and it's weird because I will say that both of my parents, I mean, as I said earlier with my mom in the spreadsheets, like both of my parents have really wanted me to succeed, and I guess part of me like was resentful of that, and I was like, no, I'm going to be an artist. I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to do blah blah, which is a very like Iranian thing. Most of my cousins are doctors or dentists or whatever, and my brother and I are just two artists.
Yeah, you're both artists.
Just dishonor on the whole family. But so yeah, it is a struggle, and it is an active, conscious thing that I'm working to undo in myself, and to undo in others now too, of just like, no, like if I can put in the time and the energy to consciously choose, like taking a moment to smell a beautiful flower as an act of revolution, then, and like accept that moment of joy and privilege, and or like of beauty and personal intimate connection with something, then I can do that in my money relationships too, and like accept that I'm allowed to receive money and equitable pay for my work. It's hard though, dude.
That is like the epitome of how we deconstruct this, right? And something that you said that resonated with me was that I really correlate my relationship with money and work and just everything that I do in life. But since we're talking about prosperity and wealth and money, to nature, like I see money just like food and like water, and in alignment with the laws of nature. There has to be, you know, I think that for me, what decolonizing is having that balance, like having that balance where we can hold both. Right. And colonization is, I mean, so many things that we think that like there's limitless everything. Right. But there are things that are limitless. But when it comes to like something so tangible, something that's physical, something like nature, it has, I'm just thinking about a garden, like planting my seeds, watering it. Like it takes time. You can't defy the seasons that are in this world. And I view that like with money. And so and something that Jay said, like love doesn't pay rent. And I kind of, you know, want to elaborate on that more. While that's true, and I know exactly what they meant by that, I feel like decolonization is a lack of love, because we have an abundance of everything. We have money, we have wealth, we have food, we have water, we have, I mean, in San Francisco itself, there's like I don't know the exact number, so I'll have to look at it, but there's an incredible organization which is, and it's ending the empty homes with doing a tax on empty housing, because there's so many houseless people here. And they're just these like over 50 or 40 houses or buildings, not even houses, buildings that are just empty. So there's not, there's not lack of housing, there's lack of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
so yeah, it's wild. I'm actually going to pull up the exact number because it's so potent. Like when I saw that, I was like, this is bullshit. So, what can a person do? Let's start with like the individual, because we've shared our stories, but if you were to give advice or guidance, or just even just sharing your thoughts on what an individual can do to explore and deconstruct colonial views around money and around their giving and receiving of that, like what comes to mind?
Okay, well,
Loaded question.
I would say, well, I'll start with the decolonizing, and then I'll narrow into the money part. I would say first and foremost, and I want to say this in a way that's like accessible to different personality types, because I may seem exuberant right now, but I do not like group settings usually, and I don't like to go to like those types of things. So I'm going to say get involved, and I'm going to say that in whatever way that means to you. But follow Indigenous led and Indigenous run accounts on whatever social media you're on. Like stay up to date with different organizations and the work that's already been done, because so much work is already currently happening and has happened. And so like let your ego stay away at the door, check your ego at the door, as they say, and move into getting involved with Indigenous led and Black led organizations, and just be be a witness, be an observer, soak up the education, and see how things are happening and what needs are being asked for. I think a really powerful image that I like to go to is well, this is speaking specifically in Indigenous leadership things, but there's quite a few like barricades and things happening right now in Canada, and something that not only white but non-Indigenous people struggle with in their allyship and accomplishship is trying to provide and help in ways that weren't asked for. So, for example, like having a sacred fire is a really important need. If you see an organization hosting an event and like an activist setting trying to stand up against something, if they're asking for firewood, do not offer childcare. You know what I mean? We want to offer what we think they might want, what we think they like are afraid to ask for. And it's like, no, they're not going to be afraid to ask for anything. If you want to get into the mindset of decolonizing, stop like thinking first, listen, and just offer what's being asked for, which is a lot of firewood, I will just say from personal experience.
I think that like a lot of people, I knew Sean was going to say something, because it drives me nuts when I am like, he's trying to like help me or do like insert himself, try to like soothe or be proactive when I'm not asking for help or support. And also like, I don't need that. And I'm just, I love you, Sean, but but I always tell him, like, when you insert yourself, we're just going to use our relationship as an example. When you insert yourself like that, it takes away my agency. It takes away my voice. It takes away my power. Like you are reaffirming to me that I don't have those things. So you have to come in and swoop. Right. And I think that I'm so glad that you touched base on that, Mina, because I feel like we all have agency and power. it's just we experience, right, things that defy that.
Yeah.
Such as, you know, that as an experience. Yeah.
But I will say, as I'm giving this criticism, it is also good to be kind to ourselves and understand that we're offering what we can from our experiences and from our very, 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 very good intentions of wanting to be helpful, good people. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that sometimes it needs a little tweaking. And it's all about a growing experience. Honestly, I think if you're not learning something every day, then you're probably doing it wrong. If you're not feeling like you're doing something wrong and like having that uncomfortable thing, you know?
Yeah, that is so true. I think that's also a part of this deconstructing process is like, how can we be, I don't know if braver is the right word, but just maybe it is. How can we be braver with being wrong? Right. So, and be braver in unlearning.
Yeah. I really think, and this is because I'm a youth worker and I spend a lot of time with kids, I think spending time with youth and kids is like the ticket in a lot of ways. But then, you know, if you're unable to be as, you know, I want to make a joke about being a successful community worker in the youth sector, but I can't think of a funny joke because it's not really a joke. But if you can't be around kids in that way and that capacity, then I think, you know, there's a certain amount of absurdism that I think is what you need to embrace when it comes to being comfortable with being wrong. Because being wrong about one thing doesn't mean you're wrong about everything. And also being wrong has no moral implications most of the time. Like 99% of the time, it's just like something you do and then you do differently. And it's not like, I know it's scary, but it's also not scary. It can also be exciting. And well, this is something that my partner actually tells me when I'm feeling really anxious about something, is to like look at the color of my anxiety in my mind of like what it looks like and compare it to the color of my excitement, and to realize that when I'm anxious about something, it's because I'm really excited about something and I want it to go well. And that's a nice perspective shift of like, this thing isn't scary because it's like a bad or whatever thing. It's a little scary because I'm so excited about it happening. Shifting your perspective there is helpful.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Kudos to your partner. Where are we at? We're almost 10 minutes till the end. So I want to like hold some space to reimagining what a decolonized, abundant world looks like to you. And, you know, I want to invite people that are here to also share what they think it looks like to them, or how they want to reimagine that, envision that. But let's start with you.
Okay. I actually did something kind of similar a few months ago that I wrote a little poem, but it's a thing for. So I'm going to read it to you because I found it. But the exercise was envisioning the future that I want and what that would look like. And the assignment was to write a letter from your descendant to you. And it's based off of the short story that I can't remember the name of now, but I can definitely share with you to share with other people because it is a beautiful practice to get engaged with. So this is called A Letter from a Descendant. And it goes, "Dear great-great-great-great-great-grandma Camellia," which is my other name. "Your name doesn't really roll off the tongue, but I love it anyway. You were the first flower on our family tree, and now there are dozens of different blooms, and we are all connected because of you. I've been going through your things, and I found a big crate. of them in my mom's office, and every day I sneak in to open it up and see what's inside. Last week, I found copies of your recipes that you liked. Yesterday, I found a box that was just full of butterfly wings. Today, I found some watercolors you did for one of your earlier art projects. I think they're lovely, and I can see how invested you were in tradition and storytelling. I also found notes and lists to go with them that you wrote about the importance of passing down wisdom and connecting to ancestral knowledge and routine. You also wrote about how lonely you felt without it, and your sparks of joy you felt learning how to connect with the parts of yourself that were divided by capitalism, war, and imperialism. I hope you know that you helped to create a new legacy. I'm sure you did. But just in case, you should know that our garden is full of roses, sumac, and fresh herbs. Thank you. So, what I was envisioning was something bountiful, something where people were connected, where my family was connected despite, being so fragmented and weird. And that idea of family and continued tradition, which I do think is really important in certain ways, but only the ways that help feed us all. I'm envisioning a world that is full of food and textures and colors and beauty, and just shared abundance. And that's what an ideal decolonial future, I think, looks like to me, is just a long line where I'm going to name all of my kids after flowers, and it's going to be a thing.
I can't wait to see that. I truly cannot wait to see that. The word bountiful and vibrant, and just, I'm just soaking all of that up. And, my vision is very similar. Like it is like where we, like, collectively and even like individually, where we don't fear money.
Yeah.
I think that is a big one for me. Like, how can we see it? Something that I invite people to, because when, there's a lot of these like wealth coaches or financial educators and people that say, like, write like a love letter to money, or, we should love money and not see it as the enemy and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, like my invitation is always like, how can we just see money as neutral, and then put the responsibility on the person or the system, right? The group, behind that, those dollars, behind that money, behind the currency. I feel like money is not even going to exist in the next 10 years. It's all going to be digital cryptocurrency, y'all. That's what I'm calling. I'm speaking it here because I really feel, I don't know, but that's for a conversation a different time. But one thing that for me, I'm envisioning is wealth redistribution, right? Like when we're at a table and we have this beautiful, gorgeous dinner with one another, right? We're sharing food. I just like, that's like a big part of my culture is, in Filipino culture is we do potlucks, we cook for each other, we share food, and we eat together, and we laugh together, and we enjoy that together. And that's how I'm like, that's how I want money to be like. Yeah. Absolutely. That's how I want it to be exchanged and received in a way that feels so pleasurable and so expansive instead of restrictive and scarce. Yeah. And, it's where we transition money not being a privilege, like having money not being a privilege, but having money being literally a human right. Yeah. Hell yeah. And yeah, I guess the last thing I want to add into, what we can do to decolonize our relationship with money, is to build on a relationship with land, for sure. That's how I challenge my view of abundance. I'm like, there's a lot of greenery here. There's a lot of food here. There's a lot of land here. Even though they're telling me that there's, or the world is showing me that it's scarce, right? And then, come to one of the last conversations of this month, but we're going to be, Mina, I know you'll love this. Nafasi is the founder of Narratives Unbound, and we're gonna have a conversation about wealth redistribution and how you don't have to martyr yourself to make an impact, right? Like, and you can like take care of yourself first and account for yourself first, while also like you can do it all. Like there's this, we're gonna unpack that, but yeah. I don't know, any last things that you wanna add, and I'll open it up to some questions.
Yeah, one thing, just while you were speaking, that was coming to me that I want to just make sure I really underline is how many similarities there are in this movement of money talk as there are with things like, the fat liberation movement and like body positivity in general. And of course, anti-racist work and frameworks. And really, knowing that these words and this practice can go across so many different realms in your life. And that is also part of the solidarity work, is to recognizing where these struggles are the same, and what tools can be used over and over again. Like talking about neutrality of money is also just really brings up a lot of body stuff for me, of like, let's talk about viewing bodies as neutral and not putting negativity on them, and or even goodness or whatever, just kind of letting them be what they are, and just making sure that you have a really well-defined practice of self-love and care, that combines like these heavy brain topics, but also with compassionate, tangible things.
Yeah, that is so real. That I'm also very big on the body neutrality as well. Such a beautiful movement, and you're right, it is showing up in so many different necessary realms. Like the deconstruction of all of this is really together. So many pillars. Wow. Well, I want to open up to anyone that has questions, or if they want to share, how they envision a more abundant and nourished world. Feel free to share. I did see Jamie. I have not heard of restorative economics, but I'm definitely adding that to my list and of things to read. But yeah, we have a couple minutes for any questions.
Or I can just go real in depth about my self-care routine. You don't have questions.
I mean, maybe people don't. Maybe we just like gave them a mouthful. I mean, this was just really scratching the surface. Like, I would love to do a real deep dive on this type of work. But I just wanted to. What were you saying, Mina?
I feel like we could do like a part 2, 3, and 4 like so easily.
I know. Oh my gosh.
I have a question, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Mina. Hi, everyone. Hi, Stella. Hi, Sean, Kit, Sophie, Jamie. I'm Jay, the one in, well, I don't know where I am on your screen. I'm just a name on there. But one of my questions is around kind of for folks who aren't even scratching the surface on this, that we are, whether it's our family, our friends who are still, we're still choosing to be around them. For those folks that there's like a hunger for learning, but they're not quite there yet, and digging deeper here. What have you seen, if any, parts of the conversation around decolonizing money has been a cool intro into that conversation, of potentially like starting that conversation? I've found that like when I want to share so much information with folks, I like who are in that stage of their healing process, unlearning process, maybe aren't in therapy process, like how can you think of, or what has worked for you in terms of like starting that conversation, or just getting asking them a question that doesn't feel loaded, or like we're coming with so much that we want to share with it, if you've experienced that at all?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say I have.
I was like, I'm gonna let Mina answer this because
Yeah, my brother likes to say that our mom is woke but sleepy.
Oh,
Which
that's great.
is adorable. And very true, because yeah, people who are working on these issues, like, they're not bad people. I love my mama, and my dad is also woke but sleepy. It's so true. But you know I guess I've actually was just talking about this from a racial lens, with a friend, because I was like, the reason I'm so invested in this work is because I love my mom and I'm not going to leave her behind in anything I do. So I am committed to these conversations. And I'll just say, like, they are obviously challenging and take a lot out of you. So definitely do all the self-care things of nurturing your boundaries in your space. But the conversations that I have with my mom that go the best, I'll say, are ones that are framed around human dignity. My mom really cares about women's liberation. That was her generation, is that like second wave feminist type of thing. And so that became like a real in for us to have more conversations on, like, talking about, well, I mean, everything, but that became a basis for being able to make other conversations around race or decolonizing things or indigenous sovereignty and gender politics, sexuality, so on and so forth, easier for her to understand and to relate to. And like, you have to be willing to do that work, and it's absolutely not your responsibility to do that work with everybody. You have to say, like, I love this person enough that I'm gonna do this work that is really hard on me, which is fucking hard to do, and you don't have to if you don't want to. But if you want to, then I would try to find something that this person cares about and use that as a stepping board for just slightly pushing here and there. And I feel for my mom. She raised a cute little girl who turned out to be a queer stripper and did the best she could. But she loves me, and she's committed to the work. And I kind of, at one point, I was like, look, I can either lie to you and we can have a horrible relationship, or I can be honest and you can deal with it and you can love me authentically. And that, I think, really resonated for her, that she realized that I have a choice to not be in a relationship with her, and that she wanted to do that, to be committed to our relationship. And it was a really big, powerful thing. And we've had so many fights. I've gotten the Christian silent treatment so often. She always comes around, but it is a struggle. And yeah, find something that this person cares about and just go from there. Human dignity.
Yeah. Wow. I'm gonna add a little bit to that as we wrap up. Mine is always like, meet people where they're at. Like, there are people that really have they are just not willing. And, I don't want to say that they're lost causes. I'm just like, they're just not ready. And I have to just meet them where they're at. Otherwise, I lead with curiosity. So I love that. You talk about human dignity. That is a big one for me. I really try to lead with curiosity and that common ground that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Even if, like, the person's not ready, mm-hmm. as long as there's no disrespect, right? Like, there's acknowledgement there. that's really how I lead into those tough conversations. But I will say, like, I definitely am, I'm at a stage where I'm more protective of my boundaries. I'm going to open that door soon. So it's kind of interesting that we're talking about it, because I was always the one to be like, let's have these conversations, let's talk about it. And these people were just not ready for that. So yeah. Sean, I guess Sean has a question. What's up?
Hello, this is a question for Mina. Hi, nice. Thank you for doing this. So as a religious educator, and we talk about like the concept of money right now, right? How responsible do you feel individuals in religious organizations should be for the historic institutions of economics that have been imposed by these religious entities? Let's use like the Roman Catholic Church, or I mean, even as far as you're saying Persian, right? Like the early Persian Empire implemented these systems that have actually had, I think, long-standing destructive economic effects. But as modern day people, how responsible are we to manage that, or is that the church's responsibility? In your opinion, this is not like.
What a good fucking question.
What a great question. Yeah. Okay, let's see. On an institutional level, I think they need to fucking pay up, personally. And this is something that I both practice and preach, as I advocate for, because I work for one of the larger churches, or like Unitarian Universalist churches in Canada. We have like quite a big endowment fund. And so I'm constantly advocating for them to put their money where their mouth is. And often they do, to bring in more BIPOC performers and guest speakers and workshops and things like that. But they've got a weird history. I'm not going to rant about it, but they're small fish compared to the Roman Catholic Church, which I mean, I'm a big nerd, so obviously I'm fascinated by them, but also absolutely horrified. And I think that there's a really interesting movement of like contemporary young Catholics who are really opposed to the violence that has been brought down systematically from the Catholic institution, who are either denouncing their faiths and turning back in their baptismal paper. I forget what the process is called, but people are actively doing that, especially as more and more unmarked graves are coming up in residential schools around the world. But then there's also a movement of young Catholics who are still committed to their faith and want to belong in their faith, but want to see change within that faith. And I think they're on a similar mindset of trying to advocate for more financial resources being distributed, and more accountability to be taken in like a public manner, which is really interesting to see. And yeah, I do think that it is like an absolutely an imperative part. If you're going to be a person of faith, and you're part of an institution, then part of the faith work, in my opinion, is to push the institution beyond its comfort zone and to pay reparations, and to redistribute that wealth, which is absolutely just a fraction of the harm reduction that can be done, because there's generations of emotional and environmental trauma to be checked in on. On a personal level, I think do what you can, and I think it's okay if what you can do is be a loudmouth about it.
Using your voice is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't like, as somebody who struggles financially so often, it's hard when I see rhetorics that are like, you have to, if you're not paying these dues yourself, then you're not doing the work. And it's like, well, I am doing the work. My whole life is this work. Because my whole life is this work, I only make, $19 an hour. So there's only so much that I can do. You know what I mean? So I think on an individual personal level, you do what you can, and hopefully you're really loud about it. On an institutional level, I feel very violently about wealth redistribution.
Yeah. Reparations.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. I think we should end on that because that was just so powerful.
It's a good
Like, I
question.
feel like it was a mic drop moment for sure. Thank you, Sean. All right. Well, we'll end it here. Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah.
I'm really, really excited about the conversation that we just had. And again, we're just scratching the surface, but and even then, this is lifelong work, as Mina said. So do you want to say anything to close?
No.
We've said enough. Yeah, we said enough. There was a lot of gems there. Well, I hope that everyone has a nourishing rest of their evening and night. We just planted a whole bunch of metaphorical seeds. So take some time in your life watering them and see what comes, right? And answers and things will change and shift.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And feel free to reach out with any questions in the future.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
On the internet. On Instagram.
I have it on the newsletter, but
Okay.
just I guess what's your Instagram handle again?
You can find me at Ghost _magic with a K or like CK. It's my burlesque account, so you will see my butt. You're welcome. But you can also ask me any questions there, and then you can find all of the other art and food and things that I do linked in the bio for that main account.
Yes.
But booty be warned.
Booty be warned. Hey, we are wealth positive, or we are wealth neutral, body neutral, sex neutral. I don't know.
Positive.
Sex positive here. Thanks everyone for coming, and I'll see you for the next conversation that we're having. I believe it is next Tuesday. Let me double check that. It is next Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about budgeting, but making it fun, which I promise is real. There are fun ways. All right. I'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.